Hello, I'm Robin Vincent and welcome to Molten Modular DIY. Today we're talking about cases and power supplies. Now this, more than anything else, has caused me probably the most amount of trouble. In all of my research and looking around, it's the hardest thing. It's the biggest hurdle to get over into Eurorack normally, let alone DIY Eurorack. Because before you can build a module, before you can start playing with Eurorack modules, you need to have something to put it in, or at the very least something to power it. And so as you approach the idea of a completely DIY Eurorack, then this just becomes this enormous hurdle that you have to climb over. A mountain, a journey to Mars is almost an impossible improbability to try to get over this. But don't worry, I have an answer, I have a solution, and you're not going to like it. But it's the one that I have, and it's the one that I'm going with for really, really very, very good reasons. And my answer is this: don't do it. Just don't do it. Don't build a power supply. Just don't do it. If you're coming into Eurorack for the first time, doing a bit of DIY, and you're wanting to learn how to solder and to make modules on the cheap and to get stuck into all of that kind of thing, the last thing you want to do is blow yourself up. And so the first thing you don't want to do is build a flipping power supply. You're dealing with real voltages, things that actually could kill you. And so to me, the very notion of messing about with a power supply when we are starting from a presumed position of very little experience is completely nuts. Do not do it. I can't find a reason why you should. And in all my research and looking at this and looking at other videos and other people doing stuff, there is actually very little detailed help out there for getting a power supply built in Eurorack. All of the videos assume that you know what you're doing, you know what you're talking about, you know what you're testing for, you're knowing how to use a multimeter, you're knowing all the bits that go together. And part of the reason why I do these sorts of videos is because there's a lot of people out there who just do not have that level of experience, myself included. And so in my view, the only way to overcome this hurdle of the power supply is to cheat, is to not do it, is to not build one, and instead get something ready built. Now that doesn't mean that we're throwing the whole DIY idea out of the window. No, not at all. I'm still interested in building my own case and seeing what happens with that. It's just with this power supply, man, it's like, it's too much. It's too dangerous. There's too much room for disappointment and error and pain. And also, it's hard enough building modules, getting those to work and testing them if you don't have full confidence in the power supply that you're plugging them into. And how can you have that if you don't have any clue how to build it? So with that in mind, this is probably going to be quite a short video, but stay with me and stay with the series. I just believe that getting over this power supply issue is an important one, and it's an important thing to move us forward, that we cannot stay here dwelling over proper voltages and proper currents without a hell of a lot more experience and knowing exactly what it is we're doing. That said, there still are one or two, but only one or two options out there for building your own power supply. I mean, without consulting schematics and getting PCBs made and designing your own thing or working or translating something else into doing it. Something actually designed for Eurorack, those are few and far between. Frequency Central has a couple of sort of mini power supplies which look pretty good, which will run a little lunchbox type sized thing. EOWave and AI Synthesis also provide a kit for a similar PCB that can run as a power supply for your rack, but then you'd also have to build the bus board for it as well. And there seems to be a bit of a disconnect between that, as in I can't seem to find any information on building the power supply unit and then using the bus board and how you connect those together. It's frustrating. It's frustrating as hell that this information is not more freely flowing. I mean, if you've found some detailed instructions or detailed videos on it, then please do stick them in the comments, because I am on the lookout for that kind of thing. Probably the best bet, and the thing that I would have done had it been available a month or so ago, is a power supply by Bufacco. I mean, it's great. It's one of these size sort of power supplies. It comes in a kit. It's about 120 quid, and you can put it together and use a regular power supply from a laptop on it, and off you go. It will be, you know, flying bus cables, I imagine, plugged into the back. And it also has this neat feature of being able to power guitar pedals, which is interesting. So I probably would have gone for that. That looks to me like the safest bet. If you are determined to build everything that's in your rack, then do that. But in my head, I wanted to try to keep it under 100 quid. That was my target. The power supply, under 100 quid. Everything that I can, if possible, under 100 quid. Although that's not going to be possible, but that's an aim at least. So it seemed to be, you know, pushing the budget a little bit. But the Bafaka one, you'll find it on Thonk and also the Bafaka website, seems like a really good option. It's the first one I've seen that seems achievable and kind of normal and doesn't require you to be some kind of electronics engineer in order just to fathom any of it out. The only downside being is that there doesn't seem to be any kind of downloadable manual, so I've no idea how difficult it is to actually put together. But if you want to do that, then that, I think, would probably be my recommendation. Not for me though. Oh no, not at this juncture. Now I hope as my DIY skills develop that later on when I'm perhaps putting together a nice sort of suitcase kind of thing, and I might well want to build in a power supply into that, in which case I will look at it deeper and further, and perhaps my skills would have evolved to a point where that would be possible. But it still scares the bejeebies out of me, so I don't know whether that will happen. So I'm sorry if any of that is terribly, terribly disappointing, and I can assure you that moving forward, DIY is going to be what it's all about. And I still have a little bit to do because I want to put together a kind of a makeshift temporary case to move us forward. So stay with me for that. But if you're hoping this video was going to be all about building your own power supply, then I'm afraid, no, it's not going to happen this time around. I hope you understand my reasons and feel free to moan about it in the comments. So what have I done? Well, let me tell you. What I decided to do was that I wanted to put together a small skiff in order to house my new DIY creations. And once I decided that I wasn't going to build my own power supply, then I just wanted something simple, something easy, something cheap that would just work and do the job. So what I went for was the old friend, the Tip Top Audio Micro Zeus. Now I have one of these already over here on this thing. Here, look, there it is. It's got lovely blue lights. Boom. It's great, it's simple, it works, it's got blue lights, it powers a bunch of stuff, comes with flying bus cables, don't need to worry about it, and it's not terribly expensive. I mean, of course it's expensive, this is Eurorack, I mean it's 80 quid or something like that, but it's not terribly expensive. Now, Tip Top Audio do something called the Happy Ending Kit, which is curiously named, and you could perhaps say that it's named to kind of represent the end of that awful journey you go through in trying to find a power supply for Eurorack, because it's also flipping mysterious. But you get to the Tip Top one and you go, oh great, a happy ending to this nonsense journey. So maybe that's it. Or maybe it's because it has those rack ears on the end and maybe those are happy or smiley in some way. I don't know. But it's a very basic thing. It's an 84 HP unit with rails and these rack ears on the side, with the Micro Zeus power supply. Boom, you're done. That's all you need. Now, if that floats your boat, then go for that. It's a good starting point. But the whole thing, the rails and everything else, costs about 130 quid. And that just seemed to be too much to me. Plus, I really don't like those rack ears. I just don't like them. I don't like how they look. I'm sorry, I just don't like how they look. So I don't want it. I don't want the happy ending kit, because for me it's not a happy ending. It's some kind of, oh, that's slightly strange. So I decided to customize it a little bit. Rather than getting the kit with the rack ears, I would just get the rails and the power supply. Rails, what are rails about? This is a rail. Do you see this? Get it close to the camera. There, you see that? It has this bar of correctly sized and threaded holes for Eurorack. This is an 84 HP one, this one. It's in black, which is lovely. And of course, you're going to need a pair. You could get away with one, I suppose, but I think they come in a pair. Pretty sure they did. So there you have a pair of rails. These are going to sit somehow. Let me work this out. Oh, a bit like that. Yeah, and that becomes your rack, like so. But no ears, so no way of mounting them onto something. I'm going to have to come up with something else. So that's the really exciting DIY part of this video, is that I'm going to be crafting something out of a bit of cardboard, I imagine, just to mount these on. Awesome. The power supply part is this, the Micro Zeus. As I said, I've already got one here. So this is the fella in the box, and this costs about 80 quid. Got that? It's a simple thing. It has all these cables coming off it, and these are what provide the power to your modules. Simple, complete, ready to go. Now, the one thing that nobody ever tells you is what you use to power this. What do you plug into there? I don't know. what I've used so far is random laptop supplies. Old laptop power supplies seem to fit it perfectly. If you can find the one that fits in that hole, so you've got a multi-ended power supply thingy, then it will probably work. This says 13 to 15 volts DC, 2000 milliamps. You've got a power supply that says something like that on the side. So let me have a look at the one that I'm using currently. This goes along here. So this is currently the power supply I've plugged into here, which just happened to work. And this is a universal AC adapter, 65 watts it says. Has an output of 15 to 20 volts, maximum of 4.33 amps. I don't have the faintest idea whether that's good or bad. I just tried out a few, plugged it in, and it works. It's a power cool one. 2-pin, double insulated. Is that good? I don't know. It's just an old laptop power supply. I plugged it in. It appears to work so far. That's what I'm going on. That's my level of expertise, ladies and gentlemen. So this is my case. This is it. Nothing more complicated. How am I going to get this to work? Well, I think probably the first thing I should do is attach this to the rails, just so I've got the rails at the right size. Then I'm going to try to fashion something which is just going to hold these in place so that I could potentially add a module without having to put my fingers on the back and on bare wires and metals and things like that. Yeah, sounds like a plan. Okay, so these rails have these fixed nuts, what they call fixed nuts inside, and these are all set at a certain HP apart so that you can best make use of your rack. On this lot here, over on my Moog rats, they're all sliding nuts. Now, sliding nuts can be exciting because they slide about and you can put anything in any position you like. You're not tied to this sort of layout. On the other side, you keep losing nuts all over the place, so that when you're trying to put a new one in, you've got to make sure that you've moved nuts from over here all the way over here, which means taking everything out and then moving them all across and then putting everything back in. And it can be a huge faff, but you do get the opportunity to rearrange and move things about quite easily. But this time around, fixed rail seems to me to be what it's all about. So I'm going to get some knurlies. Knurlies are these wonderful little screws you can get, which are Eurorack screws. Whenever you buy a module, you're going to get a little pack of screws with it, but they're usually just simple metal screws. And what can happen is that when you tighten them up, you start to mark the front panel and get what they call rack rash, which is as nasty as it sounds. Whereas these knurlies have little plastic washers on them, and they've got thumb sort of grips on them, so you can very easily undo them and do them up again. They're great. They're kind of an unnecessary expense, really, but they come in a little tub. They couldn't be cuter. They're lovely. Get some. So that's what I'm going to use. So let's get into this with this. Let's get this the right way up. Not that it matters. And we're going to see if I can screw this onto here. I'm going to move it in a little bit because it doesn't actually matter where it attaches at the moment, because I'm going to need to get the ends into something in order to screw them together. So I'm just using this as a guide. Like that. Let's see if I can line this up appropriately on the bottom. One, two, three, four, five, six, seven. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. One more across there. So yeah, look at that. It's almost a rack. So in order to keep this together a bit more, I'm going to put something on the other end. Now Thonk sent me this through to see whether I could do a nice build video on it for them, which I most certainly will. And it's the graphic EQ. Look at that, that's the front panel of it. And I'm going to use this as a spacer at the other end, just to keep everything sort of hanging together nicely. Ta-da! So there we go, this is a DIY case in the making. Now all I really want to do is have that somehow supported so that, you know, it doesn't fall over when you press buttons and move knobs. How the heck am I going to do that? Now these are tip-top rails, by the way, if I didn't mention it. It's a tip-top power supply, it's a tip-top rail. So I know that it's designed to be used with their rack ears on the side, and you can actually buy the rack ears separately. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to kind of fudge together my own rack ears out of bits of old cardboard. But it means that here it has these screw threads, so you can screw through the side of something into them, which is very convenient. Otherwise, I mean, it could easily sit on something. You know, you could make some wooden runners for it or whatever that it could sit on, that you could presumably glue it to or slot it into. I'm sure there's 101 different ways that you could craft something in order to carry this. My intention at this point is to do something as simply and easily as I can. There you go. Okay, a bit more than that. Now I'm kind of making the assumption at this point that this is going to fail. However, I've only had one idea on how to do this so far. So I'm going to go with that, and if it fails, I'm just going to have to think up something else. But my idea is to take the wings of something like this and use that. Let's give it a go. So using my friend Stanley here, I'm just going to slice up there. See, perfectly straight. Almost as if I'd used a ruler, which of course I haven't. And this one here. Now I know all you lot out there are artists. You're artists, craftsmen, craftspeople, carpenters, builders, engineers, all that kind of stuff. That's really groovy, man. I'm not. I'm impatient and silly, mostly. So I just kind of want to get something done. So this is the plan here. Look. See that? I think that is going to be as awesome as anything. I could even tilt it. Should I tilt it? What do you think? Tilt it a little bit? I don't know. Let's do one. Let's do one side. See what happens. I need one of those pencil type things. See, I know what you're thinking out there. You're thinking, what sort of idiot is this? Is this guy? But that's the point. That's the point of these videos, is that I want to demonstrate that someone as clumsy and ham-fisted as myself, who is making this up as they go, can get into Eurorack, can make this happen, can make this work. I mean, we haven't got to the end of the video yet, so who knows whether this is going to work or not. But my assumption going forward is that it's just going to work. That's all I'm going with, really. And so here we are. So I am just making it up. So that's going to be there and there. So I reckon I'm going to put a point about there. And I'm going to put a point about there. Now my biggest potential disaster for this is that it's just not going to be strong enough to hold up the rack. And that's very probable, very possible. But all I can do is try. Now I have these screws here. I went through my pots of screws trying to find something that fits this bloody screw thread in here. And it was tricky, man. But I think these ones worked. At least I think so. Close enough anyway. I'm just going to have to go with it. Let me just check that that's the case. Well, it catches, so that's kind of good enough. It's kind of good enough. Now, should I probably do the other one, mark the other one out before I connect it up? Probably. Now I'm going to want the surfaces shiny on the outside, which is the plan. So I'm going to put them together like that. Carry that through. Ooh! Let's screw it together. For some reason, I thought I wouldn't look like an idiot doing this. I thought to myself, oh, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. It's just bits of cardboard and stuff. No one's going to mind. You're not going to have people write it in saying, what a load of rubbish. What on earth do you think he's doing? Oh, I don't know. I don't know. I'm just doing it, aren't I? Just doing it. It's become my philosophy for life. Oh yeah, because there's so many people out there just doing stuff. So that's how I want to be. I don't think that screw is really biting enough. But, oh, that one's better a little bit. This one, not quite so much. Seems to be rounding. Not to worry. I'm not worried. Are you worried? I'm not worried. See, what I'm sure someone is going to point out in the comments is exactly what size screw thread this is. And then if you do point that out, then please point me to the direction of a link to the screws that I can purchase which fit that size perfectly. It's no good just telling me. I need a link, man. I need a link. And a UK link. Okay, not an American link, not a Dutch link, not a link to somewhere in China, because I literally need 4 screws. So if you're clever enough to tell me what they are, you're also clever enough to find a source. Okay, we ready? Look at that. Will you gaze upon the beauty of that? Look at that. That's a flipping Eurorack case, that is. Look, I made it myself out of bits of old cardboard. Oh, no, that's all come apart. Ah, that's so nearly though. Yeah, that's not quite right. Damn it, I thought that was quite right. Now, I had some other alternatives in here. Maybe one of these would do a better job. No, those are all the same except for... So I've got this thumb screw. Let's give that a go. No, that's no good either. Damn it! I thought I had this. I had these slightly longer ones. Maybe that will bear a bit more fruit. Or maybe it will just slip straight in and out again. It appears that the top ones seem to have caught quite nicely, whereas the bottom ones, not so much. Regardless, with a couple of bit more persuasion on some screws, I think that's going to work for the moment. I've probably completely ruined the screw thread inside these, but never mind, it's working. So there it is, using stuff that's lying about the place. I put together my DIY rack. This is how it begins. This is what I'm going to start with. Honestly, I know you think I'm joking. I'm not. This is what I'm going with. Cheap as chips, cheap and cheerful. The rails, tip-top rails and the tip-top power supply, under 100 quid together. I've used a couple of bits of cardboard and some screws that I found. Let's plug in the power supply just to see whether it starts to set fire to itself. So let's put it off to start with. Okay, that fits. Ah! You see, I'm scared even now that I haven't built the power supply, it's just plugging it in. I don't know, I'm already being overly cautious. So there's no way that I was going to build a power supply and then get the prongs out and test it? No, no, there's no way that's going to happen. Okay, it turns on, great. So with a bit of luck, there's power going to these here things, and I can check that because I've got a couple of spare modules over here that have bounced out of the rack at the moment. Let's add those in, wire them in, and see if it's working. First up, it's a Turing machine, because that was my first piece of DIY, so that has to go in here. I think it would be an honor to have it in there. Now, how do I get rid of these bits of crap that are on here? I do not know. Let's unplug power. See, I can't turn these upside down and work on them. See, there's already a bonus for you. Right, let's try to slice this sellotape off here without slicing the ribbon. See, why would you stick these things together? Why wouldn't you use elastic bands? I mean, you're asking for trouble, because you're asking for idiots like myself to cut this sellotape off, which is undoubtedly going to end up in a sliced ribbon cable. So now I'll take my lovely Turing machine. See, I love the way these ribbons come out, because they're all upside down. You see that? They're all upside down. They're all facing the wrong way, but that's perhaps because I have this need to put the power supply on the left. There's no reason for that. It could be quite fine over here. In fact, because of this being slightly on the right, it'd probably make more sense if the power supply was on this side of the world. But for some reason, my interpretation of Eurorack puts the power supply on the left. I don't know. So that's what I'm going for. So all it means is that you just have to twist the ribbons over. It makes no odds. It doesn't matter. Nobody cares. Nobody's watching. Obviously. So we'll just plug that the right way around. Now, these ribbon connectors here and the bus connectors on them, they have this little keyed out bit. Now, your cable that came with your module should also have a keyed on it to go the right way around, so that it's always going in the right way around. So that's helpful. If not, then you're going to have to consult the manual to make sure that you get the cables lining up correctly, because you need to make sure that the power is orientated the right way around. So red line on the ribbon is the usual indication of 12 volts. Red line here, that's the same, that's right, that's going together. And in on here, with a bit of luck, it says red, red, red at the bottom, so that has to be that way round. Red, 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 red. Got it? Stay safe, people. So now I can place that here. Not worried about where they are at the moment. I just want it fairly balanced, I suppose. It doesn't look remotely straight. Why is that not quite so straight? I would expect those to be fairly straight. Not straight. The other thing I'll pop in, because I just happen to have it spare, is the Eventide Euro delay. Let's put that in. This is weighty. This will test out my brackets to see whether they're up to the task. It's funny, I assumed that non-sliding nuts and a bar of nuts, a nut bar, would be so much simpler to use than the sliding nuts. And no, not necessarily. They're fiddly in their own way. Okay, let's try this. We get lights. We get lights over here. There you go. Wired in, lights on. I do not want to be touching stuff at the back of this. This is the key, I imagine, safety feature, is not to, you know, stick your tongue on any of the bare wires, that kind of thing. Keep it out of the way of small children, not stick my hand underneath and grab hold of things. I think that's a given. I'll go with that. So let's get some sound through here quick. Okay, there's a little something I had going earlier. So I need a bit of clock from somewhere into the Turing machine. There we go. Let me patch that. Don't put your fingers underneath. You see what I did then? I almost went to put my finger underneath in order to push against the patching. That, I think, is the flaw in my little case here, is my inadvertently exposing myself to electronic shock. I mean, it's not going to be massive. We're down to like a few volts here, but I still don't want to do it. I still don't want to short things out. I still don't want to end up biting my tongue. I want something that's going to work. So here we go. So let's take the output and plug that into something exciting. I'm going to plug it into the microscale. I'm going to replace the current sequence coming from the variegate, stick in a couple of notes. I'm going to take the output of the STO, plug that into the eventide. Take that output into a mixer over here. So there we are. That's a bit of a swizz for you. We took our first steps into DIY modular, and in doing so, we completely cheated. We bought an off-the-shelf power supply, or at least I did. Can't speak for you. I've fashioned together the most awesome rack. So I'm taking this to the synth meet next week, I reckon, because I think that's fantastic. Will it survive the trip? That's a whole other question. But I mean, I do hope to better this as time goes on, to build it into more of an enclosure. This is just to get us started. That's all I want to do, get us started, pushing us over that line, because it's that power supply issue that stops so many people from getting into Eurorack. And I really hope that I've got across the idea that don't worry about it. Just don't get hung up on the power supply. Get something off the shelf that you know is going to work, and then that side of things is not going to be a bother. You know it's going to work, you know it's providing the correct voltages, you know that it's labelled correctly with the right red bits here, there and everywhere, so that when you do build a module, when you spend your time putting together a module that you think might just be completely awesome, you're going to be able to plug it in and power it without worrying that you'll blow yourself up, because the power supply is going to be right for it. And that to me is far more important than being true and pure to the idea of DIY and building my own power supply. Now you can go out there and build your own power supply, that's fine. People have sent me links to people who have done that and have told me that they've done that. That's awesome, go do that. And as I say, I hope to get to that point somewhere. But honestly and truly, my advice to you if you're starting with Eurorack DIY is to buy a power supply that's already made. Do that. And then we can move forward. All right, so this is where we are. This is our starting point. From now on in, I'm getting the soldering iron out, getting out some instructions and getting stuck in to making some modules. But what's the first module going to be? I mean, that's the question. What is the first module going to be? I mean, I kind of thought it would be an oscillator, because I want to have something that makes noise. And it would make sense to me that if you're starting in Eurorack, then you'd want something that makes noise. That's got to be a starting point. However, also, if you're starting in Eurorack, you might well have some kind of semi-modular or some other synth with patching capability already. In which case, what then would you need? A filter, maybe? What is it that starts making Eurorack interesting? I mean, a VCA would be a bit dull of a place to start, although we're going to have to do that because we're going to need them. So, I mean, I figure in my head, an oscillator would be a good choice. A filter maybe would be a good choice. Some kind of effect or sequencer or LFO. I mean, obviously you start cascading into absolutely everything. Everything, but where to start? I don't know. Why don't you suggest in the comments what you think I should do first? As I say, I'm leaning towards an oscillator, so that's probably the way I'm going to go, but I don't know which one. There's some nice ones on Thonk and nice ones on other websites that might be worth a go. I do have the graphic EQ to do. I also have a sample slicer on its way to me very, very soon, I think. So those two are definitely going to get done. But other than that, oh, and I also have a low pass gate that I'm quite interested in putting together as well. So I've got plenty to be getting on with. But I think an oscillator would be a great place to start. because it would make sound. And you'd have to do things like possibly tune it and calibrate it, which I have no idea how to do. So that'll be fun in discovering that. So yeah, give me your suggestions and I'll go with the best one of those, I guess. And we can come back in a few weeks, put it together, plug it in, see what happens. Yeah, makes sense? Good. Well, thanks for staying with me so far and forgiving me, hopefully, for cheating. And I will see you next time. And in the meantime, go make some tunes, or maybe even go make some modules, or at very least, go make yourself a cup of tea.